The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Buckingham Palace. Tourists gathered behind the metal barriers, cameras ready to capture the famous changing of the guard ceremony. Among the crowd stood Marcus, a tall guard in his crimson uniform and bearskin hat, standing perfectly still at his post. A small girl with blonde pigtails and a bright yellow raincoat weaved through the crowd. Her name was Emma, and she was only 7 years old. She held a worn teddy bear tightly against her chest as her eyes scanned the sea of faces around her. Tears streamed down her cheeks. But she tried to be brave like her mother always told her. Emma had been visiting London with her school group from Germany. Everything was exciting until she stopped to tie her shoelace near the palace gates. When she looked up, her teacher and classmates had disappeared into the crowd. She called out, but her small voice was swallowed by the noise of hundreds of tourists chattering and taking photos. A tall man in a dark jacket and sunglasses noticed the crying girl. He smiled warmly and approached her, speaking in broken German. He told Emma he could help her find her teacher. He said he worked at the palace and knew exactly where school groups gathered. Emma hesitated, remembering her mother's warnings about strangers. But the man seemed kind and official. Marcus, still in his rigid position, watched from the corner of his eye. Something about the situation felt wrong. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes, and his body language was too eager, too hurried. Marcus had been trained to remain motionless during his duty. But years of military service had sharpened his instincts. The man extended his hand toward Emma, gesturing toward a side street away from the main tourist area. Emma took a small step forward, clutching her teddy bear tighter. The man's smile widened as he glanced around nervously. Checking if anyone was watching them, Marcus made his decision in a split second. Breaking protocol, he stepped forward from his post and moved directly between the man and the girl. His sudden movement caused nearby tourists to gasp and pull out their phones to record. Royal guards never broke formation without serious reason. The man in the dark jacket froze, his smile vanishing instantly. His eyes darted between Marcus and the growing attention from the crowd. Marcus stood firm, his hand resting on his rifle, his eyes locked on the stranger with an intensity that made the man take a step backward. Emma looked up at the tall guard, confused, but feeling somehow safer. The crowd grew silent, sensing something important was happening beyond a simple tourist photo opportunity. The stranger's confident demeanor crumbled under Marcus's unwavering stare. He stammered something about trying to help the lost child, but his voice lacked conviction. Sweat formed on his forehead despite the cool London morning. Without warning, he turned sharply and began walking quickly toward the nearest side street, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. Marcus immediately spoke into the small radio concealed in his uniform. Within seconds, 2 armed officers appeared from the palace entrance, moving swiftly through the crowd. Marcus pointed toward the retreating figure, and the officers gave chase. The tourists watched in confusion,
their vacation photos
suddenly documenting something far more serious than a ceremonial display. Emma stood frozen in place, still not understanding what was happening. Her teddy bear had fallen to the ground when Marcus stepped between her and the stranger. An elderly woman from the crowd picked it up and gently handed it back to the frightened girl, offering a comforting smile. Marcus knelt down to Emma's level, his stern military face softening slightly. He spoke in English first, then tried simple German words he remembered from his military training overseas. Emma's eyes were wide with fear and confusion, but she seemed to understand that this guard had protected her from something bad. Another guard quickly took Marcus's position at the post, while he led Emma toward the palace security office. A female officer joined them, speaking fluent German, which made Emma's face light up with relief. Through broken sentences and tears, Emma explained how she had gotten separated from her school group. Meanwhile, the 2 officers chased the suspicious man through the crowded London streets. He dodged between tourists and street vendors, knocking over a cart of postcards in his panic. The officers radioed for backup, describing his appearance and direction. Within 3 blocks, 6 more officers converged on the area. Creating a perimeter, the man ducked into a small alley between 2 shops, breathing heavily. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone, attempting to make a call. Before he could dial, 2 officers blocked both ends of the alley. He was trapped. One officer commanded him to raise his hands and step forward slowly. Back at the palace, Emma sat in the security office with a cup of hot chocolate and biscuits. The female officer had contacted the German embassy and was working to locate Emma's school group. The little girl explained that her teacher's name was Frau Schmidt, and they were staying at a hotel near Hyde Park. Marcus returned to his post after giving a statement to security supervisors. His break-in protocol was serious, but the situation had clearly warranted immediate action. His commanding officer gave him a stern look that barely concealed approval. Sometimes duty meant breaking the rules to do what was right. The detained man sat in a small interrogation room at the local police station, his sunglasses and confident smile long gone. Detective Sarah Chen entered the room with a thick folder and a stern expression. She had been called in from Scotland Yard Special Victims Unit because of the nature of the incident. Involving a child, the man claimed his name was David Morrison and insisted he was simply trying to help a lost tourist. His story seemed rehearsed, too smooth. Detective Chen listened patiently, taking notes while her partner examined the man's belongings that had been confiscated during the arrest. A wallet, phone, keys, a small notebook with addresses scribbled inside, as the detective questioned Morrison about his background and reason for being at Buckingham Palace that morning. Her partner stepped out to run his identification through the police database. Minutes later, he returned with a grim expression and motioned for Detective Chen to join him outside the interrogation room. The identification was fake. The real David Morrison had reported his passport stolen 3 months ago while traveling in Eastern Europe. The man in custody was using a sophisticated forgery. Even more alarming, his fingerprints matched a person of interest in 3 different countries related to child trafficking investigations. His real name was Viktor Petrov, and Interpol had been tracking him for over 2 years. Detective Chen's hands tightened around the folder. This chance encounter at the palace might have prevented something terrible. She returned to the room with renewed intensity, her questions now more pointed and specific. Petrov's calm facade began to crack as he realized his fake identity had been exposed. At Buckingham Palace, Emma's teacher finally arrived at the security office, breathless and panicked. Frau Schmidt had only realized Emma was missing when the group arrived at their next destination, the Tower of London. The head count revealed 1 child short, and Frau Schmidt had immediately returned to the palace in a taxi, her heart racing with worry. The reunion between teacher and student was emotional. Emma clung to Frau Schmidt while explaining everything that had happened through tears and hiccups. The teacher's face went pale as she learned how close they had come to disaster. She thanked the security officers repeatedly, asking how she could thank the guard who had saved her student. The palace security chief, Commander Williams, had been monitoring the situation closely. He made the unusual decision to allow Frau Schmidt and Emma to meet Marcus briefly before they left. Such interactions were rarely permitted during active duty, but the circumstances were extraordinary. Emma was brought back to the courtyard where Marcus had resumed his post. When she saw him standing tall and motionless in his uniform, she broke free from her teacher's hand and ran to him. She wrapped her small arms around his leg, her teddy bear pressed between them. Marcus remained at attention, but a slight smile crossed his lips. Frau Schmidt approached with tears in her eyes, thanking Marcus in both German and English. She promised that Emma would never forget what he had done. Commander Williams gently reminded them that the guard needed to return to his duties, and they said their goodbyes. Back at the police station, Detective Chen's investigation took a darker turn. After examining Petrov's phone with the help of digital forensics experts, they uncovered encrypted messages and photos that painted a horrifying picture. The phone contained surveillance photos of various tourist locations around London, each image showing lone children separated from their groups. The notebook found in his possession listed dates, times, and locations. The Tower of London, the British Museum, Hyde Park, all popular spots where school groups and families visited. Next to some entries were cryptic codes that the investigators suspected were referring to potential targets or successful operations. Detective Chen contacted Interpol immediately. An agent named Richard Torres arrived within hours, carrying files on Petrov that were inches thick. Torres explained that Petrov was believed to be part of an international network that exploited major tourist destinations across Europe. They targeted children who became separated from their groups in crowded places, using fake credentials and friendly approaches to gain trust. The investigation revealed that Petrov had been in London for 6 weeks, staying in a rented flat in East London. A search warrant was issued immediately, and a team of officers raided the location that afternoon. What they found inside made even the most experienced officers feel sick to their stomachs. The apartment walls were covered with maps of London, marked with red circles around tourist attractions. Multiple fake identification badges were found claiming employment with various tourist services, museums, and even child welfare organizations. A laptop contained databases of information about school tours scheduled to visit London over the coming months. Most disturbing was a locked room, containing equipment clearly meant for long-term confinement. The discovery confirmed their worst fears. This was not a random opportunist, but a calculated predator with infrastructure in place. Torres explained that they suspected Petrov was a facilitator, someone who identified and captured targets before moving them through an underground network. Commander Williams received an urgent call from Scotland Yard requesting Marcus's presence for additional questioning. Marcus was relieved from his post and driven to the station in an official vehicle. He had never imagined that his split-second decision would unravel something so massive in a conference room. Marcus sat with Detective Chen, Agent Torres, and several other officials. They showed him images from Petrov's phone, asking if he recognized any of the locations or if he had noticed the suspect before that morning. Marcus studied the photos carefully. His military training had taught him to remember faces and observe patterns. Something clicked in Marcus's memory. 3 weeks earlier, he had seen someone matching Petrov's description near the palace gates on 2 separate occasions. Both times, the man had been watching tour groups, particularly those with young children. Marcus had thought it odd at the time, but had not reported it, because the man had not done anything overtly suspicious. Detective Chen assured Marcus that even this small detail was valuable. It helped establish a pattern and timeline. Agent Torres explained that Marcus's intervention had likely saved Emma from being trafficked out of the country, possibly never to be seen again. The weight of those words settled heavily on everyone in the room. The investigation expanded rapidly over the following days. Agent Torres coordinated with law enforcement agencies across 7 European countries. The information extracted from Petrov's devices led to simultaneous raids in Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, and Rome. What they discovered was a sophisticated network that had been operating for years under everyone's noses. Petrov remained silent during interrogation, refusing to cooperate despite overwhelming evidence. His lawyer argued that his client was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the physical evidence from his apartment and digital devices told a different story. Prosecutors were building a case that would ensure he never walked free again. In London, the palace implemented immediate security changes. Commander Williams ordered additional plainclothes officers to patrol tourist areas near the palace, specifically watching for individuals who showed unusual interest in children. Security staff received specialized training on recognizing potential traffickers and suspicious behavior patterns. Marcus returned to his regular duties. But his life had changed fundamentally. News of his heroic action had spread through military and palace channels. His commanding officer recommended him for a commendation, citing his quick thinking and bravery. The incident sparked discussions about updating protocols for guards to allow intervention in emergency situations without fear of punishment. Back in Germany, Emma struggled with nightmares about what had happened. Her parents arranged for counseling to help her process the traumatic experience. Frau Schmidt implemented strict new buddy system rules for all future school trips, ensuring no child would ever be left alone in a crowd again. The school board held emergency meetings to review and strengthen their student safety. Protocols International media picked up the story after a tourist video of Marcus stepping between Emma and Petrov went viral online. The footage showed the tense moment when Marcus broke formation, his protective stance, and the suspect fleeing. Comments flooded in from around the world. praising the guard's instincts and calling him a hero. Marcus gave only one brief statement to the press, emphasizing that he had simply done his duty. He deflected praise to his military training and the quick response of the palace security team. Despite his humble words, letters and gifts began arriving at the palace addressed to him from grateful parents worldwide. Emma's parents flew to London specifically to meet Marcus and thank him personally. The palace arranged a private meeting away from media attention. Emma, now feeling braver with her parents beside her, presented Marcus with a drawing she had made. It showed a tall guard in a red uniform standing between a little girl and a dark, shadowy figure. Above it, in colorful letters, she had written "My Hero" in both English and German. Marcus accepted the drawing with genuine emotion, something his fellow guards rarely saw from the usually stoic soldier. He knelt down and told Emma through a translator that she was very brave, and that her parents were lucky to have such a smart daughter who remembered her mother's warnings about strangers. The meeting lasted only 15 minutes, but the connection formed that day would last a lifetime. Emma's father shook Marcus's hand firmly, fighting back tears as he tried to express gratitude that transcended language barriers. 6 months after the incident, the full scope of the trafficking network had been exposed. 19 arrests were made across Europe, and 12 children who had been reported missing were recovered and returned to their families. Agent Torres credited Marcus's quick action as the breakthrough that brought down an operation that had evaded authorities for years. Petrov eventually accepted a plea deal in exchange for providing information about the network's leaders. His testimony led to additional arrests in countries outside Europe, extending the investigation globally, though he would spend the rest of his life in prison. His cooperation helped save future victims and brought closure to families who had lost children years earlier. Marcus received the Royal Victorian Medal from a senior royal official in a private ceremony at the palace. The honor was rarely given to active service members for actions performed while on duty, making the recognition even more significant. His family attended the ceremony, his mother crying tears of pride as the medal was pinned to his uniform. The palace created a new position, focused specifically on tourist safety, hiring additional security personnel trained in recognizing human trafficking warning signs. Commander Williams personally oversaw the program's development, determined that the palace would become a model for public safety at tourist destinations worldwide. Emma's recovery took time, but she grew stronger with each passing month. Her counselor helped her understand that she had done nothing wrong, and that the scary experience had ended safely because she listened to her instincts, because someone caring was watching over her. She kept Marcus's address and sent him drawings and letters several times a year. Marcus framed Emma's first drawing and kept it in his locker at the palace barracks. When fellow guards asked about it, he would tell the story, always emphasizing the importance of trusting your instincts, even when it means breaking rules. His experience became part of training materials used to teach new guards about vigilance and situational awareness. 2 years later, Emma returned to London with her family for a proper vacation. They visited all the tourist sites she had missed during that frightful school trip. On their last day, they stopped at Buckingham Palace. Emma, now 9 years old and much more confident, looked for Marcus among the guards on duty. Commander Williams had been notified of their visit and arranged for Marcus to be present. When Emma saw him standing at his post, she smiled widely and waved. This time, there were no tears, only joy and gratitude. After his shift ended, Marcus joined Emma's family for tea at a nearby cafe. Emma had learned English in school, partly because she wanted to speak too. Marcus without a translator. She told him about her studies, her friends, and how she always told people about the brave guard who saved her. Marcus listened with genuine interest, marveling at how much she had grown and healed as they said goodbye. Emma's mother thanked Marcus once more, explaining that their family would be forever grateful. Marcus replied that he was simply glad to have been in the right place at the right time. But deep down, he knew that day had changed him too. It reminded him why he served, why vigilance mattered, and why sometimes the most important thing a person can do is act when something feels wrong. The incident at Buckingham Palace became a case study in law enforcement training programs across Europe. Marcus's photo and the viral video were used to teach about the importance of public vigilance and trusting instincts. One moment of courage had rippled outward, saving lives and changing policies that would protect countless children in the years to come.